thank you for coming, and the challenging London spring didn't stop you from coming here. So thank you very much for attending today's session. My name is Luca Benini. You see me right there, and I'm the managing director of a company called Buddy Media. Buddy Media is a social software company, so we provide social software to help brands and their agencies to manage their presence on social networks. We are fully integrated with the vast majority, if not all, the social networks out there, from Facebook to Twitter to LinkedIn to YouTube and Google+, and you name it. And what we provide as a service solves problems for our clients. Our clients come to us and they are facing the complexity of social media, the complexity of managing a global program, a global social execution of their strategy, multiple countries with multiple products. And that's exactly what Buddy Media does. So we provide them, we empower them to make the most of the connections as they're able to generate by providing them with a content management system, community management system, and paid ads management system. So kind of end-to-end solution for social management. I'm presenting enthusiastically today about the elusive ROI of social media. When we first came up with the title, actually someone else came up with the title, I looked at it and I thought to myself, wow, this is interesting, because we work with a lot of companies that do not and would not define the return on investment on social as elusive at all. And I think my task today here is to make sure that when you leave this room, you've moved away from the notion of social media having an elusive return on investment, and you actually know how it's measured today, and how we go about that with the best companies out there globally. Before we actually go into that, the good old question that comes up is, what is the value of a fan? And again, I hope that by leaving this room, you'll know what a value of a fan is. You'll have a much better idea of how to value the connections that you're able to create through social media. But before we go there, I thought it was interesting because I found actually a way to define what the cost of a fan is. And that is by going on eBay and seeing that you can actually get 1,500 likes in 24 hours for as little as $12.50. So hey, just go and do it, right? I find that it's interesting to see how Twitter actually costs less than Facebook. And then all the way down, I found a very recent example of innovation, actually coming from Italy. So kind of some pride here from my country. You can buy 100 Pinterest, 100 Pinterest like and more on Facebook and Twitter. But that will cost you a lot of money, because that actually comes at almost 20 pounds. So I thought this was funny. Hopefully we'll move to the exact opposite spectrum of this notion of the cost of a fan, and we'll try to really value it. And before we go into that, going back to the notion of, there was on my title, the elusive ROI. So what is this word? I looked it up on Wiktionary to try to understand how was I able to then address it to my audience today. And it's an adjective, of course, and it actually means that it's evading capture, comprehension, or remembrance, which seems to apply quite well actually maybe to all of us in this room, because that's the reason why we came here, to understand more about the return on investment in social, because as it stands right now, it seems to evading capture. But it's also rarely seen for some of us, in this room and maybe also out there. So that's what we need to address today. Is it really rarely seen? Can we move away from it being elusive and bring it to life and put some spotlight on it? And then it's difficult to describe. This is another thing that is even common to the people that actually see the return on investment in their social. So we're going to try to address that as well. So we're going to try to nail 1, 2, 3 definition of elusive by the end of this presentation. And how we're going to do it? Well, we're going to do it with a really simple agenda. You see 2 points in there. There's really just 1 point. I'm going to take you through a journey that starts with the notion of elusive ROI as we described it right now, and move to measured return on investment for social investments. We're going to therefore embark on a journey that will take us from the more softer measures that are out there that companies are using to actually attribute the value to their social media investment. Softer metrics such as brand equity, we'll see what they are and how they're measured today, and which companies are interested in that measure. And then we're going to drive all the way, passing by 6 different stages, all the way down to the transactional element of the return on investment in social. How many sales, how much more money do I make ultimately by investing in social? And we're going to try to address that as well. And everything in between, which means the journey, I hope you'll find it interesting. I had fun in putting this together, and that's actually why I put enthusiastically at the beginning of my presentation. I'm really, really excited about this. At the end, I'm going to open up for question and answers if we have time. I hope we have time. Prepare your best questions, and please do challenge me, but be nice. Let's start with the first metric. We talked about the very soft metrics that define the return on investment, and this is, they have to do with brand equity. Brand equity is the kind of the metrics that has been used since the very early days of advertising to understand people's attitude towards a brand and to understand how effective and efficient was the brand positioning in driving ultimately and moving the needle on elements such as brand awareness, brand favorability, likelihood to recommend, share of wallet. You probably heard all of these metrics. You might actually, face them and use them during your everyday job. So this is, for some reason, and for some companies, the reason why they actually invest in social. They approach it because they want to move that needle. They want to see a shift in the way that their brand is perceived, in the way that people know about what they do. They have information about their products and their positioning. I have a couple of stats here that I found about an extensive study, actually. This is from Millward Brown last year. And they looked at a bunch of top brands, and they isolated fans and non-fans, and they interviewed them, extensively interviewed them, asking them their ability to recall the brand. So looking into, as we said, brand awareness, brand favorability, and share wallet. Now, it's interesting to see how if you are a fan or a follower of a brand, you have a 50% higher brand awareness, as well as brand favorability is plus 46% when you compare the two groups, and then the share of wallet is really through the roof. You're 4 times more likely to consider purchasing from that brand if you're a follower or a fan of that brand than if you are not. Now, at first, when I looked at these numbers, I felt to myself, wow, this is great. This is exactly describing and kind of making my point that I want to make with you today, that social media is impacting brand equity, is actually building your brand equity. But then if you think about it, it looks like almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're engaging in the first place, if you choose to engage in the first place with a brand, you're probably more aware of it, you're probably more favorable towards it, and you're probably more likely to purchase from them. So I looked at another study, and I have another couple of stats here, which I think help us go in the direction in which we want to go and make our point that you can actually build and measure how you're building your brand equity through your social investments. So I looked at this other BlackBerry owner's case. It's a case study brought to my attention by Forrester. It's actually run in the US. And again, they isolated 2 groups of people, fans of BlackBerry and non-fans of BlackBerry. I think the spin to it, which I think gets closer to the point that we are trying to make, is that they chose all of these people as BlackBerry owners. So all people that actually have and use and maybe have chosen to own a BlackBerry. And then they asked them, dividing them into 2 groups, fans and non-fans, how are you likely to recommend it to your friends? And you can see that engagement, in this case, has a direct impact on their perception of the brand and therefore their ability to recommend it to their friend. And so this is closer to the example or to the case that we want to make, that social media has a direct impact on brand equity. Because if you're a fan, if you're engaged with that brand through a social network, you're much more likely, actually twice as much more likely to recommend that particular brand to a friend than if you're not. So let's move to a second part of our journey towards a transactional ROI, and again, passing by another relatively intangible, for us at least, the majority maybe of us in this room, intangible return on investment of your social media efforts. There are companies out there that are able to draw a straight line between their investments in social and their ability to improve and increase the shareholder value, the stock price, if they're actually in at the stock exchange. I have a couple of examples here that I want to analyze with you today. One is about luxury brands, and the other one is about Ford. Luxury brands are pioneers in the social media space for a number of reasons, and for a number of good reasons, I think, as well. They're the ones that are creating the biggest and best stories in our niche world. For those companies, actually, I have my good friend Scott Galloway from New York University Stern, and actually the founder of L2 think tank, recently declared, and he's truly an expert on luxury brands and that particular sector. In a recent interview, he declared that that those digital investments for luxury brands translate directly into shareholder value, and we'll see how companies are referring to it very, very briefly. The second case study in this particular shareholder value return on investment analysis is about Ford, and we look into what happened at Ford and how they've been able to use social media and through social media to improve their shareholder value. I have a very quick slide on luxury brands. We are fortunate enough to work with a lot of luxury brands, and what we know is that for them is all about the intangible. So probably everything that we said earlier about the brand equity and the ability to move the perception, to move the way that people refer and relate to their brand is impacted directly by their social media investment. In this case, I actually have an interesting quote from Burberry CEO, Angela Ahrendts, who said, commenting on last year's strong financial results, she quoted 3 elements of their strategy that were instrumental to letting them achieve those strong financial results. First one being, as we all know, innovative design. That's what they stand for. That's what they strive to have. They have one of the best designers in the world working for them. The second part to it is digital marketing, and that's where it matters to us because it's alongside innovative design and retail strategies that Angela Ahrendts, the CEO of Burberry, puts digital investments. And mainly their digital investments are about social. Their ability to turn around their company and to add and create their value as a company has also passed by their digital investment, their social media investment. So I think this is a prime example of a company that is able to measure and to move away from the elusive ROI, and internally, when they sit down, when they have a meeting, they talk about how great is their social media investment because they can see the direct impact it has on their value as a company. There's another couple of examples of luxury brands that are thriving in their own right in the same space, in the luxury brands, and there's, we could actually have an entire presentation with, dedicated to luxury to talk about how great the things that they do are. Now I want to move to the next slide and talk to you briefly about Ford. Also Ford, again, an interesting stat here, but I hope you'll see where I'm going to. In 2008, Ford were in trouble, as most of the automotive industry was. Ford was particularly in trouble. So maybe by need, because of their constraint in the budget, because of their, what they were facing as an industry, they moved more and more investment towards digital and towards social. That is one of the key factors, according to their internal people, that actually helped them to turn around their company and to add value and to create that 600% higher stock price that they are now seeing as a value of their company. So again, pleasure to work with, Ford on a global basis. Their commitment to their customers passes by social media. And once again, they are able and they see internally and externally, and they're not shy to communicate about it, that social media investment is creating value for them. They see immediately the return. Now let's move to the third point. This is an interesting one. It's about talkability for a TV show. And this was unknown to me until a couple of weeks ago when I sat down with an executive from a TV licensing company, and we talked about social media. And this person was telling me how for them, talkability, and that's how they refer to it, so the ability for a TV show to generate a buzz, positive or negative actually, that there is, so even with controversy, has a direct impact on the money that they're able to make through that TV show. This is unprecedented. Until last year, it was all about the ratings, right? So this is an example of a recent study looking at how many tweets in real time were happening during the season finale of Sherlock Holmes. It's just an example of how social media and TV come together. My next slide is with an actual quote that actually actualizes what we are saying right here. So return on investment in social for TV companies is actually measurable because they know that the more buzz they get, the more they invest and the more they're able to generate noise around their TV show, be that good or bad, they can actually get more money. The way that Sky pays back to their TV show license owners is a portion of the subscription will go to them, and that portion is determined by the ratings and the talkability factor. And this is a long algorithm that looks at how ultimately will talkability add value to the TV show, and therefore they're able to resell the value to the advertisers. It's a very interesting concept, I think. And it doesn't end there, because I thought to throw in here another couple of examples of how TV and social, and the notion of an interactive TV is on a spin right here. I don't know if you know about Into Now and ZBox. Into Now is the US example, and I think ZBox is the UK example. It's a couple of applications that typically run on your iPad, and they have a Shazam-like system that will recognize what you're actually watching and will start to pop you with relevant information about that particular show. Which of your friends are actually live right now watching it? They're going to pop you with additional information about the show, maybe an engaging opportunity, take a poll, vote, send a message. But also they will broadcast some advertising. They will continue the experience of the advertiser that you actually get through TV. It will come to you, closer to you, on your lap, on your iPad. And that's adding a ton of value to both TV shows and to the social media world, of course. And again, it substantiates this ability for social media to add and bring value to different types of organization. The ZBox is the UK example, is a very similar application, and actually to substantiate what I'm saying about TV seeing the value in social, Sky recently bought a large stake into ZBox. It was January 2012. Fourth point that we're going to make today in our journey towards transactional and measured ROI is customer services efficiency. So efficiency ultimately means saving costs. And it's funny how, and actually I'm going to pull up the next slide immediately. It's funny how I was again talking to an top exec of one of our UK bank clients, and they were telling me that the only way they have to justify a social media investment internally, and this is a bank, so maybe it's an extreme case, but it was interesting because they justify the investment, the funds that they get, because on the other side, they're seeing savings on customer service. Typically by diverting people from their call centers, putting them in front of a computer, training them on how to respond to a tweet or to a mention on Facebook or a Facebook post. And by doing so, they're actually saving money. The money that they're saving is the immediate return on investment that they're seeing. And I found this quite interesting because it's not only the banks that are actually seeing that immediate saving, and therefore, we can call it a return on investment when they start to invest in social media and when they start to put money towards their social media presence. I have another couple of examples of great clients of ours in the UK who are also leveraging heavily their presence in their social media platforms, addressing and using it to address their customer inquiries. Now, I was talking about efficiency. I want to make a quick point about effectiveness, because we also work with clients that are also much more effective in their communication by diverging more investments towards social. This is an example of, I don't know if you heard about it, last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago, in the US, JetBlue had trouble. They were flying from New York to Las Vegas. Their pilot freaked out. There's a video on YouTube, go and check it out, Flight 191 from JetBlue. Well, this guy is the pilot. He started to run on the plane, shouting that there was a bomb. He was panicking, was completely out of his head. And people had to, calm him down, actually passengers. They stopped him from going back into the cockpit, and obviously that generated a lot of concern, and that could have turned into a PR disaster for them. The way they jumped on social media and they were able to address it and to be very upfront in their communication, I think they benefited a lot by having direct access to their customers. The people connected to their customers that maybe were on that flight and were worried because they had an emergency landing. There were not a lot of transparency. There was some panic across the industry, the planes industry. So it was interesting. And I think I'm just using this to say that it's not only about efficiency, but companies are also seeing a return on effectiveness in their ability to address PR possible disasters. Let's move to point number 5. This is a very quick and straightforward one. As you've noticed, we've moved from very intangible or relatively intangible to more tangible ways of saving money on your customer service. This is even more tangible. You can actually measure it. How much referral, how much traffic do you actually get from Facebook, from Twitter, when you start to use it and use it in the right way? This is an image of traffic, of course. The way I want to substantiate this is just with one stat. I'll bring another example, but I think this is kind of nailing the point. I know very well Comscore. I used to work there, and I'm very fond of their measures. In recent days, I was talking to someone there, and I asked them to look up what percentage of traffic is actually driven to YouTube by Facebook, and that turns out to be actually a larger percentage than from Google. So there's more traffic going to YouTube from Facebook than from Google. This is a fundamental shift in everything that we know about traffic referrals, in everything that we know about being able to generate those additional eyeballs. The way it translates, on my slide, for instance, is my good friend Ze Frank. And if you're old enough and you were working on the internet in the 90s, you'll remember he was the first vlogger. He's still around and he's still kicking, and he's actually just recently relaunched his episodes, and I find them hilarious. And he's contributing to this idea of bringing people from Facebook into the YouTube environment and generating those traffic referrals. Last week I was talking to the MD of a large UK-based digital publisher, a digital publication, and he was telling me how in the last 6 months, around 30% of their traffic they can attribute directly and solely to Facebook, by virtue of their users sharing and resharing stories when they're interested in reading something, some information that they find, some funny facts. They actually retweet it or reshare it, and that generates an additional 30% of traffic for them. So it's this is working, and again, these are companies that are able, and there's a ton of companies out there that are able to answer that question, what's my return on investment in social? Their answer will be straightforward and number, referring to traffic referrals. The last point that I want to make is the transactional point. We are finally talking about sales. So we're talking about that return on investment that typically is actually discussed out there in the real world. How is the direct impact of my social media investment on the bottom line, on my sales? And typically, in this case, it's about attribution and it's about online transactions. So let's take a look at that particular journey, and I have a couple of interesting news for you, I think. So this is the journey that I can take if I'm interested in buying a DVD, or I'm actually just curious about what's out there, and imagine this is a piece of information as well as an item that I can purchase, as in this case it is. So I'm browsing Movie Shop because I want to, I'm thinking about buying the DVD for Casino Royale. I'm actually immediately prompt with the opportunity of sharing it, and maybe that's exactly what I want to do. Maybe before buying it, someone will do it after buying it, but that sharing ability is an interesting one, and it's a relatively new one. So I hit share, and this is what happens. I'm popped with a window that allows me to, in this case on Facebook, but I can tweet about it, I can actually send an email about it with a link on it. And I can have an opinion, I can share my opinion with my friends. I want to tell them that I think that Casino Royale is the best 007 of the post-Connery era. And people might agree, people may not agree. What is certain is that it ends up in a very prime real estate. It ends up on my timeline, right there. And also, it ends up on my friends' newsfeed. So they have an opportunity to engage with it. I think the latest stat is 16% is kind of the average across the board of people that will actually see, of your friends that will actually see your news and will have an opportunity to engage with it. What we know so far is that it works. It generates traffic, it generates brand equity. We've talked about multiple measures. And we know that it ignites a virtuous cycle that ultimately will result in sales. What we don't know is that how to track that and how to do that attribution exercise by reverting back the map, remapping back to the initial share an actual transaction that happens at the end of the spectrum here. And what I think here communicating to you, this is based on dummy data, but it's exactly what we've seen with me buying a Casino Royale DVD or actually commenting about it. The lights are now on. We've recently introduced a very interesting new tool that we call Conversion Buddy that allows our clients, and we have large retailers that are really using it, to understand and to draw that direct line, social media investment, social sharing, all the way down to a transaction. Not only that, but they can also understand what are the top products that are being shared, that are actually igniting that particular virtuous cycle. What are the particular products that are actually generating the vast majority of sales? Kind of redefining what their most important products are, and redefining also what their most relevant and important users are by virtue of this. Why is it relevant for them? Because by having access to this information, they can actually constantly iterate and optimize and ultimately get a higher return on their investment in social, even if and even when it's down to a transactional element, a direct sales, online sales. So we've come to the end of my presentation, and hopefully we've seen 6 interesting measures that help us to move the notion of return on investment for social from elusive to measured. We looked at how companies are measuring their brand equity return on investment. We looked at how shareholder value is impacted directly by social media investments. We looked at talkability for a TV show. We looked at the customer services efficiency and the savings that you can make by diverting some resources to social. Web traffic referrals, we had the incredible stat about YouTube getting more traffic from Facebook than from Google. And ultimately, we just seen that also sales are directly impacted, and we can now map it. So my message to you today is know what your objectives are. Start with knowing exactly what it is that you're investing in social for. Keep that very clearly in mind, because then you will know to understand which are the measures that are relevant for it, and you will have to then track, optimize, and iterate to make the most of it, and hopefully you will be able to sit back, relax, and celebrate your success. And with this, I thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.